Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, spiritual life coach and your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. This is a message to all of you conscious creators. If you feel like something is calling you to show up in a bigger way in this world and feel a sense of urgency and mission, we're at a pivotal point in human history, and for those of us who feel the pull, it's incumbent upon us to maintain our humanity, to live with authenticity, and to express the visions we hold within us. If you know there's a purpose in your life, my purpose is to help you make that happen. And if this message is awakening a curiosity within you, I invite you to follow the link in the show notes and have a conversation with me. I'm here to support women who are ready to make their mark in this world. Also, I invite you to join me over on Her Inspirations. Follow the link in the show notes. At the moment, I'm going through the Deeper Knowing series, and it's looking at how those often shunned emotions are a gift to us. My guest this week is Devin Grinrod, a Reiki master, evidential psychic medium, and quantum healer. Her work is helping clients to overcome their traumas, limiting beliefs, and end toxic generational cycles. She balances spirituality with science, helping you heal with the why behind the woo. During our conversation, Devin shares the story of her spiritual and societal awakening, which began in 2012. She also talks about the increasing importance of community and collaboration as the outdated and corrupt structures of society crumble. So as always, I begin by asking my guest. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
I feel it in several different ways. So when I'm in a really good group of people and we're having good conversations, when I'm out in my garden or in nature, when I'm meditating and connecting up to spirit, and just in those kind of like little moments in life.
Thanks for that, Devin. And before we go on, I'd just like you to share a bit of your story and what got you into the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, so divine guidance is kind of the best way to put it, because it just kept being one random step after another until it felt whole. And it was just taking those steps that gave you that like absolute full body heck yes feelings. And I never thought that in a million years would I be running a spiritual business. I had my eye on academia and research. And so that pendulum just swung way over to the other side and stayed there. And, essentially I had a friend come to me and say, "Hey, I just had a Reiki session and I think we should get certified." And I asked her, I was like, "What the heck is Reiki?" When she described it, I told her, I think I said this in my head. I was like, "I think you wasted your money. That sounds fake." But out loud, I think I said something of like, "Oh, let me look more into it. I've never heard of that before." And then I had one of my yoga instructors told me she was a Reiki master and offered to gift me a session. And I figured, like, I've spent an hour of my life doing worse. Let's just see what this is about. And it was so profound. I had spirit guides come in. I saw a past life. And then after the session, the yoga instructor was telling me all about my body. She's like, "Oh, I see that you have an injury on your right knee." I was like, "How would you know that? I've never said that to you. It's not something that affects me in yoga." And I was just so mesmerized. I think it took about a whole 5 minutes into the Reiki session where I was like, this is the rest of my life. I'm doing this every day. And I haven't looked back.
Amazing. So what does work look like for you now in terms of, I know no day is typical, but what is it that you're doing and who is it that you're serving?
Yeah, so I serve a whole host of people. Most of my clients come to me for overcoming trauma, specifically sexual trauma. And I work with clients all around the world because energy is amazing and can transcend space and time. It doesn't know any of our physical bounds. Um, I also practice quantum work. So that is working on the fifth dimension in the quantum field where we are overcoming different obstacles. And really, what the quantum work does, I think, is so impactful is that it can clear out the charge of an emotion. So, um, let's say we're working on sexual trauma with that. We go through different emotions: anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, and shame. And go back to the first time in your lineage. So it could be your life, it could be a generation, it could be a past life. You go back to that first moment where you felt that anger around sexual trauma, and you clear out the heaviness of the emotion while retaining the wisdom, and then realign your timeline back to now. And so when you take out the heaviness, you're able to look at the world differently. Um, so my days, I don't know, I do, just like every other business owner, this super fun bureaucratic stuff like emails and and admin things. I'm a solo entrepreneur, so I wear a lot of different hats. But the fun stuff is working with clients, and I just love showing up on social media and making those silly videos. I know it's like a love it or hate it thing, but I love social media. I think it's so much fun. You get to connect with so many really cool people. You and I met on social media. Meet people from everywhere. I just, love connecting and talking to people. So I think, probably why I'm in a service-based industry.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting what you say about social media because I know so many people are dead set against it. And won't come on, which is fair enough. Like I'm not saying come on because then I know that there are then it has its opposites. There are areas and reasons why it's not really the best, especially if you're quite young as well, and it's like your first foray into finding out what the world is or being influenced by things. I mean, for me, it was just like static magazines, with a lot of Photoshop, like so we could maybe to an extent kind of differentiate between what was real and what wasn't real, whereas now it's so immersive and it's like with you constantly, like to the point where people feel, if they don't have a device near them or something like that, it's this kind of panic sets in of like, who am I and where am I and what that's going to mean. But by the same token, one, being able to meet people like yourself from all over the world without social media, I don't know how that would happen. So I can't just kind of throw it out and say that it's all bad. I think it's mindfulness, really, or mindfulness about the way that we use things. But I think I've learned so much from being on social media. And then also, there's like, we can all go down various different rabbit holes and get fed different things. But I think even if you kind of find out something that's not necessarily true, or you find out down the line that it's kind of like a little bit of a deception, it just gives you another possibility of something. It gives you that kind of idea of there being multiple different realities or takes on realities. When you were speaking, actually, one of the things that you mentioned was 5D. And the reason that I want to kind of like elaborate on that with you or have you elaborate on that is that there is so much shift going on in the world. And especially within spiritual circles and different modalities as well, even to the point of some religions, that there's an awareness that change is happening and we are moving into some new I don't want to say new age because new age is a completely different thing, but a new age, like a shift in reality, a different experience of what it is to be human, and different modalities will call those things that shift different things. So we've got 5D, we've got New Earth, Age of Aquarius, the Kali Yuga, the Ascension, the Rapture, all of those things, which I think are many people just talking about the same thing using their own language. And so, how does your work incorporate 5D, and what does that mean to you also?
I definitely agree that we are moving into a new era. Our time and our energy is shifting. So my personal belief is, you know, and this is just going based on what resonates true to my heart when I hear these different theories,
Mm.
is that we are shifting from a time of masculine energy. We've been in a masculine energy era for about 2,000 years, and now we're shifting into an era that is really balanced masculine and feminine energy. And I see this reflected in so many relationships around. I know my husband and I, in the last probably 2 or 3 years, have been really evaluating what it means to have a feminine energy and a masculine energy and how we want that to look in our relationship. Um, and so we just see this reflected. And I'm sure you've talked about this in the past with the powers that be, they're thriving on that toxic masculinity. And I don't use that word lightly because I don't think men are inherently toxic. I just think they are toxic. The powers that were, I like to call them, because their structure is crumbling. But what I think is happening is as we're shifting into this new era, everybody is just exactly what you said. You took the words right out of my mouth. Everybody is using different words to describe the same thing that's happening. We're shifting into this new energy. And how my work plays into it and what I help people do is just find the light within themselves. Because I mean, every day we wake up, there's a new different, headline that's going on where the sky is falling. And I think the best thing that we can all do is to step in our own light and feel into our own intuition and what just rings absolutely true for us. When you get that like gut sensation, like, yes, this is what's happening. That is what I want to help people align with. Because when you are empowered, when you are standing in your power and you know your truth, absolutely, nobody can sway you into any malevolent direction. And so I feel like my work is helping people find their own light and stand in their empowered sovereignty and just say, this is what I want. Because we are in a time where we're all creating, like, the world, we're having that blackboard is erased, and that's, showing my age. I guess we have whiteboards now, and we're writing everything brand new on there. And so I think the more that we come at this new age from our own light and our own empowerment, the better that this new age is going to be. And my light is different than your light, is different than everybody else's light listening to this. And as long as we are standing in that power, we're coming at it for the best and highest good of ourselves and everybody around us. So I personally think that is the most important thing we need to do right now, is just focus on that light and that spiritual connection within us all.
I get it. Yeah. I mean, that's why I do what I do in the spiritual life coaching. And what's interesting as well, it's even if I get someone who wouldn't necessarily consider themselves to be a spiritual person, or they wouldn't use that label, say that they do any of the spiritual things, that they seem more open to just hear what it is. Because before it would be like, I'll just kind of tell it to people who I feel I won't have to defend what it is that I do or overly explain. It will make sense. Whereas there just seems to be more of a like, oh, okay, what, more of a curiosity about that, because it seems, or in my observation, that especially where we're coming out of, we hope, the past kind of 3 or 4 years, and that whole kind of pandemonium that went on and really just shifted the world for all of us, really, that then it got everyone to question in ways that they probably wouldn't question. Everyone was just getting on with their life and doing the thing that you do. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, weekend, go and do it again, holiday, come back and just keep doing that. And then suddenly there was this massive pause on the world, as well as there was this like deep kind of layer of fear that was being like laden down on everyone, and people came out of it in so many different ways. And what's really interesting now is, years later, to start to hear people recall their experience of it. There's enough space between it being that feels like a current threat, but then to look back and go, okay, that's how it changed me. And like, regardless of the opinion of what you think it was, it's just like now people are kind of looking at what do you do when you're faced with your own life? And even, if you think that you've got some sort of like threat to your life, but when you're then there's also there's that extra layer, but also when you're just faced to pause and you can't necessarily leave your house and live your life the way that you want to, so you're forced to be like completely still, and everyone's like forced almost into a sort of meditation, as it were, and people dealt with it in different ways, what that came out of, and what came out of that for them. And also there was a lot of talk, and there has been a lot of talk, and still is a lot of talk, about spiritual warfare and what that really means to us. And people will either see it as something very extreme, and it can come across very heavy and dogmatic if you look at it that way. But then, like I say, on a more subtle level, there is a grab for our spirits. So that's the last thing I think that we have that maintains our power, because the minute that we've relinquished any connection to our spirit, then we've just relinquished our souls, I feel. Well, I mean, does that play into the work that you've done? Does it play into your experience? How does that resonate for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if our spirits were the most valuable thing on this earth, then Bill Gates would not be researching the God gene.
Mm.
And for spiritual warfare, it is heavy. I'm not trying to make light of what we're going through, because this is a really heavy and tumultuous time. So if you're feeling heavy, tumultuous, and it's just hard to show up in the world, it is because it is. And to give yourself grace on that day to day. I know for me, there's some days where I wake up and I'm like, no, I'm not doing things today. It's just I can't, because especially being so energetically sensitive, it's so much more difficult to move through the world. And I don't say that as like a pity party and an excuse to check out of life by any means, but we just are laden with so much energy and frequency and all those things. But that being said, everything is energy. And so if you look at the frequency of emotions, the people who are on the heavier side of the spiritual warfare, devil, whatever you want to call it, they are working with the lower frequency energies. They thrive. They feed off of that fear and pandemonium that they create. And looking at the frequency of emotions, the higher you go up, we have love, enlightenment as kind of the top frequency of emotions. And you can connect to love and enlightenment through prayer, through meditation. I know you were mentioning people who aren't spiritual. My dad was just staunch against it. Like, he respected what I did, but he was just like, absolutely not. We're not doing this. But he would go out and hike and walk around in nature for hours. And that is where he found his peace. And I told him, I was like, Dad, that's meditation. That is you finding your peace. Everybody finds it, whether you use the word spirituality, whether you use whatever religion that you align with, it's connecting to that same loving energy. And I think we all need to do it in whatever way resonates for us. Like, my way of connecting to spirituality is by no means the best way for everybody to connect to spirituality. It's best for me. And, the more that we just have that open mind where it's like everybody is going to understand something from a different viewpoint. And so if you are part of organized religion and that is what brings peace to your heart, then keep going, keep bringing peace to your heart in whatever way feels best and true for you. And the best way we can combat the spiritual warfare is through staying in those higher level emotions, because, and this is how Reiki works. Reiki is the energy of unconditional love. And because it's energy, it can infuse down to, the nucleus of every cell in your body, because energy it can go wherever it would like to. And so when you have that high frequency energy, the low frequency energy always wants to level itself up to meet the high frequency energy. So the more that we are all living in that, not a love and light bubble by any means, because we need to recognize our shadow, but the more that we connect ourselves to that spiritual realm, the more that we step into our own empowerment, we are leveling ourselves up, and we're hanging out in those higher frequency emotions. And those fear-based emotions don't have any power, because they are wanting to come up and meet us where we are at. And So the best thing that you can do is find, whether it's one breath of peace a day that turns into two, that turns into three, just allow yourself to find that peace and to understand that you are a sovereign being, and sovereign beings cannot be controlled. We can give our power away. We can choose to do that. But once we choose to reclaim that power, it's reclaimed. That's that.
Beautiful. And there was something when you said about highly sensitive, and it was interesting because I wrote something down today as well. I heard it on a podcast that I was playing earlier where he was actually talking about food and like the fact that like we're just, where do we go to find good things in our body, like many of the things that are being placed within our food for our benefit, the fluoride, so we have nice teeth, are like just not that. And so it was more someone talking about nutrition than anything else. But he said something that I actually wrote down, and because I just really like the way that he worded it, and he was saying that a lot of people get told that they're highly sensitive, and it almost gets kind of thrown at you as an attack, almost like, oh, you're too sensitive, you're highly sensitive. And he was just saying when he started to really clean up his diet and really he noticed how he had sensitivities to things that he wouldn't even have noticed before, even like toilet paper and deodorants and things like that he just constantly used for years and years and then as a man. But he was saying, is it that people are highly sensitive, the ones that get called highly sensitive, or is it that everyone who isn't that sensitive is actually super numb and super clogged up with the things, so that anyone outside of that looks highly, looks overly sensitive, when it's actually the opposite way? It's like the people that are caught in the toxicity of trying to navigate this world, really, because when you look around, you have to work really hard to try and eliminate as much of the toxicity that is doing its best to infiltrate every aspect of your life, your food and your cleaning products and the things in your clothes. It's just like it's all over and all around us. So it's then to how to be in this world knowing that all of these things are going on as well. I think this is one of the things that many people struggled with as well, especially if they quote unquote became awake during the past 2 or 3 years, because it was like, hang on a moment, things aren't necessarily adding up. So if they didn't fall into too much fear, then they still were able to look at things and be and have questions around it, even if they didn't have the answers, just to have questions about it, or watch what was happening and see what was making sense, and then just kind of watch the moves of people and how it benefited or didn't benefit the majority of us. And now here we are a few years later now, where more and more of the reality of that situation is coming to the surface. More and more people are realizing that the world that we live in isn't necessarily as safe as you want it to be, and part of being a sovereign being means taking on responsibility for every aspect of yourself. We can't just be kids in the world anymore and expect, daddy government to look after us and make the best moves for us, because recent history is telling us that that's not the case. And unfortunately for many, as we go on into the next, couple of decades, the fallout from this whole situation is just going to become more and more apparent. How are you kind of girding yourself to be more sovereign and more solid, having an idea, I'm putting words in your mouth, but having an idea of where things need to go before we come out the other side? Because I just feel like there's an entanglement, there's a dismantling for sure, because they're being exposed, but also, as a serpent's going down, or is going to try and pull everything down with it in one last ditch. And that's the point that we really need to kind of hold ourselves together more, there's that kind of final death throes, as it were, before we go into what it is that we're all holding light for and we're all trying to create. How are you like preparing yourself for that, and preparing people who are asking these questions of you?
Well, very similar to what you were just describing on that podcast. So about 12, 13 years ago, I actually had a vaccine injury. And speaking to what you were saying, like I felt it in my third eye. And I wasn't spiritual at the time. I just knew I've always been really intuitive with my body. And I just felt like it almost felt like my spirit was being dampened. Now I have better words to describe it, but what I would have described back then is like it felt like my light was going out, and it was just like, hard to kind of open my eyes and be in the world. And the way that I healed and overcame that injury, because I could not get any help in the allopathic community. I was actually told to leave doctors' offices when I mentioned the V word. And I utilized nutrition, acupuncture, and chiropractic care was what got me out of it. So cleaning up my diet, getting rid of all of the toxic cleaners in the house, and that healing path lit my spiritual awakening path. They kind of happened at the same time. And so I've been on that journey of detoxing my house and my life for 10 years or 13 years at this point. And what I would say to people is like, just do it one bit by bit. Find one thing that you can make better. I mean, even now, 13 years later, my husband and I will find something and it's like, oh yeah, this is toxic. We shouldn't use it.
Right.
But it's always about making that decision that's for your best and highest good, that next decision that is for your best and highest good. And what we've been really getting into the last 2 or 3 years is the aspect of food and the nutrition in it, because we're buying organic, but is it coming from these like big super farms that still use like the minimum amount of pesticides that they can? So glyphosate's still in our food. And what about the soil health? And so we've been really getting into regenerative farming, and we have, we're recent homeowners. So now we have a garden in our backyard, and we're working with local farmers and the farmers market. And so I would say, if you really want to make impactful changes, use your money to do that, because the heavy energies out there, they are thriving in this economy. Jeff Bezos, thriving. What did he like double his net worth, or so? I don't know, something ridiculous. He got so many more billions of dollars than he had before the pandemic started.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, we're not here to hate on money, because imagine if all these light workers out there were billionaires, what that world would be like. It's who you are and what you do with that money that matters. So whatever money you have now, if you can support maybe one small business, maybe, align with one farmer, I'm in Texas, so you can buy like 1/8 of a cow or something and put it in a freezer. And so just start doing small shifts like that, because when you get these companies in their pocket is when they actually start to care. When you say you're putting fluoride in my products, and it's harmful to my health, they're like, meh, you're still buying it, aren't you? But when you say you're putting fluoride in our products and it's harmful to my health and I'm no longer participating in this game that you're playing, they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Fluoride is out. They're going to do whatever they can to keep you as a customer. And so I think it's important to really support small businesses that you align with their morals and values. And I know that this is a really difficult economic time for everybody. So doing this in whatever way is manageable and feasible for you. So whether it's, changing one single product and that's your mark on the world, you are still making a mark, because, you and I are both small business owners. So one person invests in us. I know even when my $7 meditation gets purchased, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful. And it's $7 isn't changing anybody's life here or there, but it's the intention and it's the impact on it. And it's somebody saying yes to their future and what morals and values they align with. And like I mentioned before, the future is all about energy. And so if you're putting your energy, even a modicum, towards that light, it's going to exponentialize. If that's even a word, it is now. We're going with
it. Yeah, exactly. I think it should be a new one anyway. We're like making up so much stuff in this world. Why not And it's good, like, let's exponentialize the future. And you know, you're talking about small business, and do you know what? Even if I get a notification that someone signed up to my mailing list, you know, which like which gains me zero pennies, it's just like they heard something and they went that extra step to kind of click and
Yeah.
and fill in and kind of go there, and hopefully then, and even then I feel as much responsibility for that person who signed up on the mailing list than the person who's like going in deep with a coaching package with me as well. I know I never experienced that in any job that I had, which is one of the reasons that I never stayed in any job for very long, because there was just always this feeling of, this ain't it. We have like such an opportunity also to create from our hearts and our souls and make it happen. And that's another thing that I think is really exciting, to be able to have an idea and then make it happen, you know, at whatever speed you're capable of doing. And then if you don't, you know, if you don't have all the gifts or all the skills necessary, you can reach out and you've got this help come from nowhere. That's what I think is so amazing about this time also as well, even though there's like this massive shift and this like such uncertainty and you know, financial instability and wars and ill health and all of that kind of thing. But these are the things that are the kind of the turning point, I feel, for us moving forward.
And what I wanted to also touch on is when you were talking about these organizations that are no longer going to exist, I think the best thing that we can invest in ourselves right now is creating a community with different people who have different skills in it, because we are going to need those local farmers, those local ranchers. And if you haven't already, it truly, 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 this is your day. Take this as your sign to take control of your health and start learning about holistic care, whether that is herbs, homeopathy, what have you. Get yourself a chiropractor, acupuncture friend, like find a way to really take control of your health and wellness, because I see the sick care system that we have built on petrochemicals and greed. That is, I mean, it is crumbling so fast, like right before our eyes. It is just being dismantled. And I mean, they keep kicking themselves in, what is that? Shooting themselves in the foot. That's they're just, you know, it is tanking. And I don't say this from a fear standpoint. I say this from an empowered standpoint. When you are able to take control of your health and wellness, nobody can take your sovereignty for you. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons why going through the pandemic was so, quote unquote, easy for me, was because I already went through that. I was kicked out of allopathic already. And so I already had to find my way. And, you know, I don't say this from an ego standpoint, just as an empowerment. I remember talking to someone a couple years ago. We had a law passed in Texas where you can no longer terminate your pregnancy at will. And, you know, I don't think anybody should ever tell somebody else what they can and cannot do to their body, especially the government. Whose business is that? Absolutely not. And I remember talking to somebody and he just said, as a woman, don't you feel disempowered? And I thought about it and I was like, no, not at all. It has been over a decade since I gave any modicum of care to that community. You know, to the allopathic community. And I know what to do with my body for whatever situation that I'm in. I have a team around me. And so when you are already set up, when you have these strong foundations on an independent system and the mainstream system crumbles, it doesn't matter. Your foundation is already built. It's already solid. It's just, you know, like if a building downtown was being demolished, like you wouldn't care. Unless you lived inside of it, you wouldn't care.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. And yeah, as long as you've got like somewhere else to live, then you just watch it go down, really. And I think that's the fear that many will say or will poo-poo the idea, because it's like, well, if we don't do that, what are we going to have? We'll have anarchy and chaos and all of, and you know, everything will go to ruin. And to an extent, I think that could happen. Like for instance, if if the digital banking system, if you went to get money out and that wasn't working for you at any point in time, then yeah, there'll be that panic. But like you say, if you've got a community around you, then there's another system that you can work with until if and when that kind of system rebooted itself or we kind of went through to something new. And I think it's just because we're at the cusp of it and we've not yet fully built what the new is, or the new is not yet fully realized. Although I know many people are literally laying the groundwork as we speak now and seeing what it can be and doing as much as they can to make it visible for those who just still yet can't be like, well, if we don't have government, if we don't have healthcare, if we don't pay our taxes, what will become of the world? It will just be finished. Like, no, actually, because it existed way prior to all of this, and the system that we've come reliant on is actually what hijacked what was natural and what was good for humans prior to that. We just grew up believing that this was it. So then we can't see anything other than that. But the truth of the matter is there was life prior to that system that may or may not have been, for the good of people. But it just shows you that this is not the only way to do things, the sole way to do things. What co-ops and communities have you got around you? You spoke about the food, and what else? If someone's listening in and go, okay, well, what does that look like?
I think it looks like many different things. So it's, so for me, food, I'm a big person. I'm big into food. So I was like, okay, how do I find a sustainable food source? We'll go local. And, if you're concerned about global warming, my eggs come from 30 minutes away. My eggs don't come from Idaho. My, whatever fruits and vegetables don't come from whatever country. They come from right down the road. And that's how we were truly meant to eat. I remember I studied abroad in Italy, and I went to the grocery store and I was asking for strawberries in November. And they're like, are you out of your mind? Strawberries are a summer fruit. And I was like, yeah, but I want them now. And they're like, oh, Americans. And, and so we were always meant to eat with the seasons, because each vegetable has, like, each food style has its rhyme and reason. We were meant to eat the really hearty foods in the winter when we need to have a little bit of extra, cushion on us for the cold. And we were meant to eat those light and bright foods in the summer when we're meant to be outside and our energy is meant to be up and vibrant. And energetically speaking, winter is a season of introversion and introspection, and summer is a season of extroversion, and growth and expansion. And we're meant to live in that flow, that energetic flow. But as far as finding other different communities, it's start looking at your interests. Like, what are your interests? If you were to say, like, I want to create a total off-grid community, and we don't have to go there, but just this is how it kind of helped me create a total off-grid community. What would be the top 2 or 3 resources that I would really want to connect with? And then look in your community and find people, because there are people in your community doing exactly that, also looking for community. And I'm in freedom cell groups on Telegram. I don't know. Do you guys have Telegram in the UK?
Yeah, we can connect on it. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a group of people who are like-minded, who, like me, believe that sovereign beings should not be governed because we govern ourselves. And people have farms. There's people like me who live in HOA communities who don't have farms. And there are, just anybody and everybody in between. But I mean, social media is such a great place to find and connect with people. So just think about those first 2 or 3 people that you'd want to connect with in your off-grid community. What do you want that to be? And then start going out there and making connections. And then once you have those connections, think about, okay, what's in my top 5? And then kind of go down the road. And, a year from now, 2 years from now, you look down and you're just like, I have my entire community right here, and I need and want for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's so many more people open to the idea. So I'm grateful that you said that. And when you were talking about being in Italy, it reminded me of, I went there many years ago. I was only there for a couple of days. But one of the things that I remember, a couple of things, is one, how much food everyone ate. And like there's like multiple courses on these meals. I'm just like, how's everyone eating? There's like very few obese people as well, considering the amount of food that they were consuming. But I remember when I came back to London and just looking in the supermarket, and it felt as if, like the fruits and the vegetables are all kind of vacuum packed in this stuff. It was almost like they were being suffocated. I just kind of looked at them almost like they were there, just kind of like, help me, like this feeling of them being really kind of pulled down and suffocated. I saw how much I kind of relied on that, and not that it made like any huge difference to the way that I consume food or how I bought food. It gave me just a different way of looking at the way that I was living my life. Even though I didn't necessarily do anything like radical about it at that point in time. But I just saw how, having been, especially living in a city like London, just reliant on so many other systems out of my control. So that if if the guy that's bringing the strawberries from the other half of the world, just something happens to him, then we don't get the strawberries, not because there aren't any, it's just because these chains of supply that we rely on, and we have no control over, then control what we eat, and not even just in terms of the quality, but also in the availability of it. And then talking about systems again, when we had the early days of the pandemic, I don't know if they did this one to you guys, but then decided that they weren't going to put any toilet paper in the shops and tell us that there was a shortage of toilet paper. And I don't know, was there really a shortage of toilet paper, or just decide that you weren't going to put any in the shops for a couple of weeks to wind people up and see what happened? And you saw what happened. And that's when I was really just really pulling back and watching the systems that we had in place that could make things appear or disappear.
Yeah.
Without us realizing that the shortage isn't that there's a shortage of toilet paper. No, it's just sitting at the edge of town, and it will come in when the go's been given to like drop it back in the shops as well, because it was overnight, it was back. So no, and then multiple systems that just played with people's emotions, and just seeing how it is like a Truman Show, if you want to kind of use like an analogy of a movie, where the scenery literally gets moved in and out to create your reality for you. And like the reality shift that we're going through right now is, the scenery is being moved in for us. Like they're moving out all the Halloween stuff now for us, and wheeling in all the Christmas. So you guys have got like a little holiday in between time. So, and that really occurred to me as well. I really saw how that shift would happen when I was doing a lot of retail work, because it was like, oh, we take this off now. And before we went home on Christmas Eve, because I had the misfortune of having to work on Christmas Eve when I worked in retail, before, like, we closed the shops early, but we didn't go home early. We were then pulling all the kind of current stock off and pulling all this other stock on to say that there was a sale on. And it was just like, this is how we are manipulated. Our reality is manipulated around us, because there are display, like display. That's what I did as a merchandise. What was the name of the role? Display merchandiser. I'm trying to actually remember what my job role, what the name of it was. But literally, my job was to change the scenery so that people were coming expecting different things. And it was just being able to like witness how you can manipulate people's feelings and their perception of what's happening around them by the scenery that gets moved in and out. And like you're saying, going back to how you started, is like, once you get into that core center within yourself, then you don't kind of get pulled and blown with the breeze of being told of what day it is and what we should be celebrating and how happy or how sad we should be. Just like really recognizing the reality that we're in at the moment, or the reality that's being presented to us, and building our power up, and taking our power back. All the corny hashtags that everyone's saying, there are levels of truth to them.
Exactly what you were saying, because when we are grounded, when we are rooted and secure within ourselves, and I noticed this within my circle during COVID, it's like all of the people in my circle who were really embracing their sovereignty, who had a strong connection to spirit, those were the people who had an easier time navigating things. We all fall prey to fear because there was some sort of fear placed on our safety in all regards. Our safety was being theorized. They were putting fear in our safety. Yeah. But the people who really had that sovereign connection to themselves and to spirit, and who could sit there and discern the truth from the lie for themselves, because truths and lies for what's going on is different for each and every one of us. And I think each and every one of us has a role to play in this awakening, whether that is staying asleep so it wakes up 20 other people, or whether that is waking up and helping other people to wake up. So I don't think that, it's easy to demonize people on either side. Like, oh, you still wear a mask, that's stupid. Oh, you don't wear a mask, that's stupid. Just, make your own choice and let people live their lives. But the people who were really standing strong in their sovereignty, they were the ones that weren't swayed. They were the ones that are just like, no, you said something wildly different last week. This week is a 180. And then, 2 weeks would go by and it's like, okay, now we're back to that first standpoint. And it's like, I remember I think you and I were talking about this in like December 2021 and January 2022, everybody in the US got COVID. And, whether you had all 17 shots or no shots at that point, you're just like, well, I made it through the other side. We're fine. And I think like 2 weeks later, the CDC was like, well, it's okay to start going out again. It's like, is it now? Was it okay? Is this the science saying it? Or is this because everybody is waking up and being like, this isn't anything. Why did I live in fear for 3 years, whatever it was? And so it is just a show. And once you are able to see it, once you're able to recognize that like everybody that we see on the stage is an actor, they're playing their part, it's easier to see between the lines, to read between the lines of what they're saying and what they're doing. And, to touch on the toilet paper thing, are they just not stocking it for a couple of weeks? We were told in the US that there's a shortage on just about everything. But then if you listen to the lesser news articles, you would hear that the governor of California wasn't allowing the ships, shipping container ships, to come into port and, disperse their goods. And it's like, so we don't have a shortage. You're creating the shortage and then telling us that it's happening. Okay, I get it now. That's the game you're playing. And so again, it's just about finding that local community. Even if it's soap, you can go down the road and find somebody with a goat farm that makes their own soap. You don't have to go to the grocery store and buy that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a price difference, but you can figure things out. Some people, you can volunteer at these farms and, in exchange for product. Mm. And there's so many different ways of currency and trade and purchasing. And I think, like you said, we grew up in this one way, thinking this is how you're supposed to live under this regime, da, 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 da. But for so long, we lived in communities without, most of human history happened without currency. It happened with bartering and trading, and everybody just kind of had like chickens and a goat and a cow or something, and they made it through. And like, I grew up on a farm, and my dad would deliver to these different farm stands, and he would give somebody extra eggs, and they would give him some steaks, and we would give somebody a pumpkin, and they would give us something. And, you just have this really generous community. When you can say, I have this skill or service that I can offer, can we do something about this? And people say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think once everyone would feel safe that's a supportive way of doing things, and they'll go along with it. But it's that taking on the responsibility and having that self-trust as well, because like if you have self-trust, then you take on the responsibility, and welcome it, because even if at the beginning you don't feel that you're up to the job, very quickly you'll find ways of being up to the job, and the strength and the growth that comes with that, and the transformation you see in yourself as a result of doing something that you thought you couldn't do, that you needed to outsource or ask somebody else for their opinion on the experience that you're having within your own body and within your own reality, then changes everything. And yeah, there's a it's just an interesting time to look back on and see where we're at, especially now, going into like another Christmas and going into a new year, and the whole, we're going into another flu season now. This is what, and thinking about what that could possibly be, and understanding that maybe what we think of as illnesses are not necessarily illnesses, but our body's just responding to the fact that we just go a little bit crazy over this period of time. And, if you kind of overload something, then it needs to expel itself. And the body is wise enough to expel itself using its elimination passages, and sometimes it just doesn't look that pretty, but you come out the other side and you're well. So it's just hoping that more of that belief in your own autonomy and power, and the ability for us to change the world, as opposed to, I did a lot of protesting, and I don't know if it actually did anything. I mean, it got me out of the house. That was one thing, it got me out of the house when there was nowhere much to go, and having conversations with anything. But did it really make a change? I'm not sure, but looking back on that, I think, and also because that's so against my character. I don't like crowds. Don't like going in places where I don't know where the toilet's going to be for hours on end, just creature comfort stuff like that. But it was interesting, that whole period of time, and even now seeing that there's more protests for different things. And I understand why people feel the need to protest, because you need to get your voice out there and make a stand. But the curiosity I have around a lot of the things I'm seeing is but when it was being done to you by your own government, you didn't stand up. Why is it that we can kind of take on the mantle for others? And that's not to say that we shouldn't, but when something is directly happening to you, you allow it to be okay, or you turn the other cheek almost, so I've not had a direct conversation with that, but I'm just, having been in the city this last week and looking, going, well, this is a worthy reason, but when it was being done to us by our own, did we stand up? And the majority of people didn't, so there's that also. I don't know what's happening in your state.
We're having a lot of protests and a lot of really strong voices on either side. And I'm going to start off by saying I don't agree with anybody being harmed in any way whatsoever. So my heart is always with the innocent people who are caught in the crossfires.
Right.
And what I think the issue is around the protesting is when our own government does it to ourselves. They're not telling us the atrocities that they're doing to us. They are giving us they're gaslighting us, and they're telling us why they're doing what they're doing. And it's always for our health and safety. Right. Always. And so we have mainstream media telling us about these atrocities that happen around the world. And so they have us thinking oh, thank goodness I live in the United States of America and I am so safe here and my government just loves me.
Would never do anything like that.
I couldn't imagine living in this country, but it's no, they're doing the same thing. And I don't know how it is in the UK, but it is legal for our news to lie to us here. That they don't have to tell us the truth. They can just bold-faced lie and there's nothing they can do. So our news is entertainment. Not everybody truly understands that it's entertainment. And that is one of the biggest issues, because they're trying to placate people. They're trying to subdue people. We were going back to all of the things that are kind of oppressing our spirituality and our growth. I mean, in the US, it's no holds bar as far as chemicals in our foods. Like, you want fluoride in that? Yeah, we can do that. Mercury, as long as it's in a little dose, it's fine.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think you guys have a lot more restrictions on that, but still not great, you know. It's not
No.
as it should be. If it harms you, it shouldn't be in food. We shouldn't be consuming it or putting it on our body. And kind of the backlash that I get, which I'm starting to get less now, is people would say, but it's in small amounts. It's in trace amounts, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, well, if every single thing you're eating and every single thing you're putting on your body has a little bit of toxicity in it, that's a whole lot of toxicity you're putting in your body every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, people have like that white coat syndrome where, you know, the alphabet agencies and the news outlets tell them that it's safe and it's totally fine. Like the CDC approves it. Why would it be harmful? You know?
Why would something harm? And it's funny what you say about the news, the media lying being illegal. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of like whether they've worded it as it being legal or not legal. But one of the things that they do have, even though more and more people are deciding that they're not going to contribute to it anymore, is the BBC have a license fee. So it means it's like illegal technically, but like if you read the wording correctly, it isn't, to watch any of their broadcasts without a TV license. So it's kind of how they get it, saying that you're watching TV illegally. So if they don't, they'll come around and force you into court and make you pay for this money. But the wording of these things is I was actually watching someone break down the wording of some of the letters that they send to people, and they're just like veiled threats of like, well, if you don't pay this, then we're going to come and step into your house and take your things and charge you this much money, you know. So it's like that's how they kind of get it. And unfortunately, there's a generation that just will believe that that's a good thing to do, and are the most at risk and are the ones that are being harmed the most right now by the idea that it's necessary to pay for a body to continually lie to them and mislead them in the faces of being upstanding. I think with Britain, the way that it kind of gets sold to us is that there's this great PR agency that like tells us that Britain is Great Britain, or so then no one can ever believe that that a government would ever do anything like any other territory would do, but they just do it in a way that you would, you know, you think it's for, you know, it's beautiful and it's for your good, but you know, like take a step back and look at the results of the things that you're being fed and are going along with. It's as evil, if not more so, because it's kind of presenting itself to you on a silk cushion, but it's harming you in multiples of ways. So not directly illegal, but they kind of like scare people who don't read the fine print or don't read the words properly to believe that if you don't pay for this, that's illegal. So that's kind of how they got people. If you don't pay for your own mental deception, then you're doing something that's deeply against the law.
Like you were saying in that letter, it has those like veiled threats and whatnot. And during COVID, I took an NLP and hypnosis training, and that really opened my eyes on how we are communicated with. Like before that, I knew just not to trust the TV, but I didn't know the depth of really how they were doing things. And now I see like the NLP tricks to get you to think it's your own idea to do something, when they're putting that, they're like, do this, but subtly. And, you know, the hypnosis training, it's just repeating those things, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. Like my husband and I don't have cable TV. We use whatever streaming services are out there. And so whenever we watch commercials, we're like, oh my God, this is not that, you know, the TV shows are any better themselves, but like the commercials are really, they really that subconscious. And you know, TV is something that we shouldn't watch, but whatever, it's a guilty pleasure. And I know I've spoken a lot about off grids and finding your community, but we're also living in this current reality. And so I think it's important for us to to do whatever, gives us peace in these times. Like, these are hard times. So if you want to watch TV, go ahead, watch TV. If you want to eat fast food, go ahead, eat fast food. Like, do what makes you feel at peace. And that is what's going to really help you get through, because when you're at peace and when you're calm, you can make grounded decisions.
If ever there was grounded advice, it's that, and that's exactly what we need. Do you have any last words? And then also, can you share how we can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think last words, kind of what I just said, just find how to get your peace. Find out how to soothe your nervous system so you can make those grounded decisions and really have that independent thought pattern. You don't have to follow the crowd. You don't have to follow the masses. It may be easier today, but it's going to make it a heck of a lot harder tomorrow. And to find your community that is also saying no to the mainstream today, to whatever is in alignment with you, because then you won't feel so alone out there.
Mm-hmm. And there's more out there than you realize, actually.
Absolutely. Once you get in those communities, you're just going to keep finding people. It's going to be the most beautiful snowball you've ever been involved with. But if you want to connect with me, speaking of building communities, I would love to build communities with you guys. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at Spiritually Balanced. And my website is spirituallybalanced.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for today, Devin. I loved it.
Thank you so much, Carol, for having me on. This is great.
Thank you, Devin, for sharing with me, and thank you for listening. Find out more about me on my website, carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. You can connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn under Carol May Whittick, and Instagram Kazmic, CAZMICK. Until the next episode, have a great week.